I've just returned from hell. Written by Deeify. Brought to you by Midnight Pasta. I'm not a good person. I've done bad things. I've hurt people to get ahead. I've ruined people's careers just to advance mine. My children don't speak to me because of how abusive I was with them growing up. All 3 of my marriages ended in divorce due to my infidelities. Call me an atheist, an agnostic, or whatever you want, but I've never believed in God or even a devil. I'm very aware of myself, and no matter how much pain I've caused other people, admittedly, sometimes even purposely, to entertain myself, no one deserves what I went through. I'm currently laying in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines and IVs. I don't remember how I initially got here, but there was apparently an attempt on my life. The last thing I remember is working in my home office and then blackout. The nurses said I had been shot in the back of the head and was lucky to be alive. I will have permanent brain damage for the rest of my life, but luckily, I'm alive. The police informed me the would-be assassin had been caught and confessed to what he did. Apparently, it was a former employee in my company. I'd never met him before, but he was part of a department that I deemed obsolete and laid off the entire department. The plus side was, I was able to pay off my Corvette years early thanks to the savings of that particular closure. Apparently, one of them didn't see any silver linings to the layoffs. After I blacked out, I awoke in the hospital with medical personnel filling a small room. I was standing at the far end of the room, perplexed by my sudden awakened state as well as my unfamiliar surroundings. The medical staff were doing all they could to save someone's life. It was almost out of a movie or a TV show. Although I had just woken up. No grogginess or fatigue, which was very strange. After a few seconds of trying to gather myself, I decided I needed answers. "Hey!" I yelled abruptly to get someone's attention. "Why have I been brought here?" They ignored me and continued their work. Now, I know I'm not exactly the nicest guy in the world, but they could have taken 2 seconds to acknowledge me. I became impatient. "Hey, Doc!" I exclaimed as I grabbed his shoulder. I couldn't move him. He was solid. I don't mean solid like he was tough to move. I couldn't move him at all. I couldn't even move his scrubs. I felt every ripple of his shirt as my palm pressed it. It was almost like it was made out of a plastic or a metal. I pressed again. Nothing. I pressed harder. He didn't budge. Something was clearly not right. I tried getting the attention of everyone else. I yelled at them and pushed them. I even tried slapping one of the doctors on the back of the head. I felt my hand hit, but it's as if he was wearing a helmet. Not one strand of hair budged. "What the hell is going on here? Somebody answer me!" I screamed, feeling a bit more panicked. As they continued their work, I looked down at the patient they were hastily trying to save. It was me. I was watching these people trying to save my life. My eyes widened out of the fright at the realization of me having some kind of an out-of-body experience. I stood frozen as I watched them. I was a complete deer in the headlights. After a couple of minutes, I began pacing the room nervously as they continued their work. I heard a voice coming from the doorway. "Hello," the whispered voice said softly. I nervously looked towards the direction of the almost seductive-sounding voice. It was a nurse. She could see me, and she was beautiful. She smiled at me, giving me almost a sense of relief and warmth. I shakily replied, "Hi," I said, hoping she would volunteer to clear up some of my confusion. "Come with me," she said with a grin, motioning me to follow her with her hand while walking away. I did just that. I took one more glance over my shoulder at my body and began walking out the door. As I exited the room, I looked to my right in the direction she had walked. She had already made it a good 20 feet ahead of me. I began walking quickly to keep up. "Ma'am, slow down," I beckoned. "You're walking too fast. I can't keep..." The hallway was getting noticeably darker as I walked. I looked behind me. The ER room I came from was gone. The doorway was now just a wall. No yells from the doctors and nurses. It was dead silent. The dark hallway seemed to go on without end. I looked in front of me again. "Hello? Nurse, where are you?" I yelled as loud as I could. "This way, hun," her seemingly disembodied voice said from the darkness. I walked and walked for several minutes. Blank, empty hospital walls were all that greeted me as I made my way further into the darkness. No more doors, no pictures, no people. The hallway became darker and darker with every step. "Almost there now," the nurse said from the blackness. I stopped right there. By now, my concern had turned to annoyance. "All right, I'm not going any further. Nurse, come back here and tell me what's happening, and then I'll come to you," I said sternly. Silence. "Hello, nurse. If this is a game, I'm really not..." I was stopped by my realization that the hospital walls were gone now. The black void the nurse had walked into was now surrounding me. The darkness seemingly went on for an eternity in all directions. I stood confused. Even more confusing was the fact that, while I was completely surrounded by darkness, I could see myself clearly. My body was still lit up, as if I was in daylight, yet there was just nothingness around me. Could this be some sort of purgatory? I began to hear voices coming from the darkness. At first, I could only hear murmurs. I couldn't tell if they were mumbling or just in the distance since I couldn't see anything around me. They became louder and more numerous. Many voices were now yelling. I could start to hear what they were saying. "You're scum. You're getting what you deserve. You'll pay for what you did to me now.
I hate you.
I hate
You're
you.
Scum.
Finally,
I hate you.
you're gonna feel the pain you've caused
You're
me.
evil. You're scum.
I vividly remember some of the terrifying voices say from the darkness. I try to cover my ears as the voices became louder and louder, but it didn't help. I dropped to my knees and yelled for them to stop. What do you want? Who are you? Go away! I frantically yelled. I tried to act tough and add sternness to my orders, but my voice cracked with every demand. I ducked my head while continuing to hold my ears. The voices became louder as it continued to berate me. I felt an impact on my chest. I fell back and began clutching my ribs. As I looked up at who or what hit me, I saw a man standing in front of me. The hatred in his eyes is something I cannot describe, nor wish to. He stood over me, with his fists clenched. The voices were beginning to die down. People were starting to gather around me. One by one, they seemingly appeared from the blackness, all with similar looks of hatred on their faces. The voices stopped. There were dozens upon dozens of people surrounding me, standing there with terrifying glares. It was now eerily silent. No one was talking. I nervously panned the crowd of people around me. I put my hands up as I begged them to leave me alone. What? Who? Before I could start my plea, they began to attack me. All of them at once. They were kicking, punching, and scratching me. The rants and yelling started up again, this time even angrier and meaner than before. Stop! Go away! Help! Help! I frantically screamed as they continued to claw and beat me.
I've been waiting a long time for this, rich man,
I heard one of them say as he kicked me in the head. A woman who was clawing at my side with her nails taunted me as well.
I'm gonna tear you apart. You deserve far worse than this.
I felt the raking of her claws on my torso intensely. Yet when I looked at my skin, no marks, no scratches, or blood. It's as if nothing happened, but the pain was there. The group continued their assault on me as I lay in a fetal position trying to block as many of the blows as I could. This was a pain I've never felt before. The mental pain was equally strong. After what felt like an eternity, the people stopped their kicks and clawing and began tearing my clothes from my body. They were so violent about it, bending my limbs in ways that would normally break them just to get the clothes off me, but nothing was broken though. Feeling the pain of limbs being stretched and bent without anything tearing or breaking is indescribable. The assault continued as I lay naked on the ground, desperately attempting to plead to my attackers and blocking their strikes. It was here that I don't know why I did what I did, but I began yelling for help from an unlikely source. God, please help me. Please help me. Oh God, please help. I yelled into the air as I felt another blunt kick to my ribs. God is not here," one of them yelled. "He's abandoned you." I didn't know what to do, so I did the only thing I could. I continued my pleas to a God I've never believed in my entire life. This seemed to anger these people the more I continued. "You're evil. No one will save you. I hate you. We all hate you. God hates you," another man said while desperately trying to get his punches in among the crowd. Just as he landed his successful strike, they stopped. They just stopped and stared at me. No one uttered a single word. They stared at me with a look of repulsion, as if I wasn't worth the beatings anymore. Without a single spoken word, they began walking away. There was a deafening silence as they walked back into the darkness. I lay there, naked, beaten and alone. No bruises, no scratches, no blood. Just the immense pain for my seemingly unending attack. I began crying as I lay beaten physically and emotionally. I began to realize where I was. This was hell. Not the fiery pit of lava and rock I always imagined it would look like. It's dark and cold. I laid there for several more minutes until I felt a presence. I couldn't see anything, but there was something there, and I could feel its hatred in the stale air. This hatred, though, was far deeper. A groaned whisper came from the black void around me. It was in another language, but the message was received. The tone of the voice terrified me, as I knew its intent was malevolent. As I tried looking around for where this voice came from, I felt an excruciatingly painful grasp on my ankle. If my bones could break, they would have been crushed to powder. Something was dragging me violently. It was dragging me so fast. My naked, beaten body was sliding across the bare ground. The burning pain on my skin as the ground scraped underneath me was unimaginable. After I don't know how long, I stopped. After I hugged my torso in pain for a few seconds, I began to look around. The black void was still around me, but there were people. I panicked at the thought the attackers had returned. My panic turned to confusion as I realized they weren't attacking me. They weren't even looking at me. They were all just wandering around aimlessly and naked like me. I stood up slowly and walked towards one of them. "Who are you? Where are we?" I asked. He turned his head slowly at me. He had a look of confusion on his face, as if he was confused as to why I was speaking to him. He continued shuffling on, almost zombie-like. Everyone around me was doing the same, aimlessly wandering. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, if I could see further into the void. I was in hell. This is going to be my new eternity. I fell to the ground in tears. Some people turned to look at me, but all with a blank expression. As I sobbed uncontrollably on the ground, I felt the presence return, paired with a growling sound. From above us, a body came hurtling to the ground, hitting with a deep thud. The person yelped in pain as they impacted. This caught the attention of the others, who then cowered in fear. They began crying while holding their arms up in the air as if to block something. I then witnessed something truly horrifying. One of the crying people just lifted off the ground violently and disappeared into the black darkness above, paired with another growling sound. The others let out a sigh of relief and began their slow shuffling. The person who had fallen was sobbing hysterically on the ground. I ran to her to try and help. As soon as I touched her, she screamed loudly, swatting my hands from her. She got up and ran. I watched her run quickly until she disappeared into the eternal darkness. I don't know how much time had passed after that. I started walking around almost as aimlessly as the others, but all directions were just more darkness. Some people glanced at me. One man gave me a glare as if me simply being there irritated him. No. The presence was back. I felt it. The evil that coursed through me was intense as another body dropped from the emptiness. Another thud was heard, paired with a scream of pain. The others once again put their hands up in fear. An intense pain went through my entire body as some invisible force was crushing my body. It lifted me into the air. It was my turn for whatever tortures lie ahead. I could see the scared people below me become smaller as I was lifted higher and higher. The grip around my body was so tight and so painful. I began crying in defeat when, from the emptiness in front of me, I heard a voice. "Is he going to be okay?" A familiar voice said. It was my daughter. What is she doing here? I yelled at her. I screamed for her help. "Stephanie, help me! Help me!" My voice started to shrivel as the immense pain continued through the entirety of my body. "I love you, Steph. I love you so much," I continued as I sobbed. I began to feel tired, exhausted. I don't know how to explain it, but I passed out. I awoke to more voices around me. I felt a sense of panic as I opened my eyes. My body was too weak to move. I looked up in fright. It was Stephanie, and she was smiling at me. "Dad, can you hear me?" she said quietly. I nodded with a frightened look. "Dad, you're going to be okay. You were shot, but the doctors were able to remove the bullet. They saved you," she said in a much-needed, loving tone. It took a full day before I could speak coherently. The bullet had lodged itself in my skull just enough to put pressure on my brain. If the doctors had made one screw up, I would have died. I've been in this hospital for 4 days now. Every day I think about what happened to me. Was it truly hell? Did I get a glimpse into an eternal damnation that awaits me? Or could the pressure on my brain have caused a hallucination? Whatever the explanation is, the horror I experienced was truly terrifying. The short time I was there was so scarring. I can't imagine an eternity of the same pain. They say I flatlined for a full minute. If all of that, everything that I saw and felt could happen in just 1 minute, I'm truly terrified of what's in store for me when I die again.